All right, you've got 5:02 and you're live.
Very good. Before we start, is there anyone waiting or observing or wanting to speak?
I've got 4 people watching on YouTube, but nobody requesting access to the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Well, welcome to those people and welcome to everyone here. Let's start by calling the meeting to order and doing a roll call. Carrie, do you want to do that or shall I?
I will gladly.
Sure.
Councilmember Rafter,
Here.
Councilmember Murphy,
Here.
Councilmember Risberger,
Here.
Councilmember Lepari-Shu.
Present.
All are in
All right.
attendance.
Well, the first order of business after the roll is approving the minutes from April 12th. Are there any objections to that? Additions, changes?
Looks good to me,
All
John.
right. Let's approve the minutes. And apparently there's no one wanting to make a public comment. Let me just make sure that's true.
That is correct.
Okay. So we only have 2 topics on the agenda tonight. And the first has to do with the mask ordinance, which I believe Gary Herzig is going to be starting with that. And so maybe we can do that. Gary.
Thanks, John. So the New York State has adopted the new CDC guidelines, which I believe state that masks are only required outdoors by those who cannot social distance and are not vaccinated. Our current downtown ordinance requires all persons to wear masks outdoors at all times. So the question is, how would you like to proceed? A couple of thoughts I have is I don't think that we want to adopt an ordinance that allows people who are vaccinated to not wear masks while others must. I think enforcement of that would be impractical, and I don't think any of us want our police officers to be stopping people, asking them to see a vaccination card on the street. Another thought is I am waiting on guidance from Albany on parades and festivals. I am told that should be coming shortly. I don't know when shortly will be. I know I've had requests for a Memorial Day parade, but I've stated that until we receive guidance from Albany, we will not be issuing a permit for a parade because we have no idea what that guidance will say. So if we are going to be allowing festivals and parades at some time in the foreseeable future, do we want to weigh that into a mask or keeping the current mask ordinance, or considering if there is going to be a festival or ordinance, just making that a requirement for those events? So I'm not advocating one way or another. These are just some ideas I'm throwing out there. I'll leave it up to the committee to discuss the different options.
All right. Luke, you have a comment?
A comment and a question for Dave Merzig, if I may. David, didn't we, when we voted, I can't remember the exact language, but wasn't this ordinance in effect until the state executive order expired?
Yes.
Well, it's that, I think that was the intent, but the language is not there.
It doesn't. It's still right now. The language says what the language says, which is right now that downtown you have to wear a mask. Simple as that.
Katie.
I have it in front of me and it says 122-6, this law may only be enforced during the time that a declaration of emergency is issued by the New York State governor due to an epidemic or disease outbreak that is communicable through droplet contact or airborne transmission. So as long as the executive order is still in effect, which I believe it is, and again, I'm not advocating one way or another, just giving the language so that everyone can consider it equally. So as long as the executive order is in effect, I think it's still viable.
That's helpful, Katie, because my copy doesn't have that language. So the copy that Kerry provided me, which is a copy I signed, I did not see that language. Maybe I overlooked it. So
It's
David could check
possible.
on that. The executive order has been rescinded
Gotcha.
or at least modified to now be in compliance with the new CDC recommendations.
Gotcha. Yeah, I pulled that up from our code from eCode 360. So
Okay.
that's what we've
Carrie,
given the public.
Carrie, can you check on that? Because I know I had asked you to send me a copy, and when I read through it, I did not see that there.
I am pulling it up right now. It's listed as 122 sub 7 in the final copy that's submitted. So you won't see a sub 6 on the copy that you were provided, but it's codified. I'm looking at eCode right now as sub 7, and it's up on my screen as 122 sub 7 enforcement. Sub A, this law may only be enforced during the time, et cetera, as the council member stated.
David,
Something to consider, I'm sure I'm not the only one that saw this, but notice has been given, at least through SUNY Oneonta, that they're going to require vaccinations for any student who's going to be doing in-person classes in the fall. Something to think about.
one question, are we able to prolong or continue the mask requirement independent of the state? David, perhaps you could.
I'm not sure. I'm still working on the emergency order. Mayor, you are sure that declaration of emergency has been rescinded?
It was either rescinded or modified. Yes, I'm certain of that. I can search for it. I know I received a notification on it at one point.
Yeah, the only thing my concern is that if we're following the CDC guidelines, then there are still enforcement issues, because if the CDC guidelines, as I understand them, are that you still have to be masked if you're not vaccinated, and you're in a downtown, for lack of a better term, area. You're in a public area, and are wearing a mask. Oh, there you go. Look at this. Your activity outdoor. They don't say if you're walking in the downtown area.
No, oh. Okay, I'm unmuted. No, I am. I can't tell.
No, I
This is
can
my
hear
first time screen sharing.
We're hearing you.
Okay, cool. It does say attend a crowded outdoor event like a live performance parade or sports event. So to the mayor's concern about having a Memorial Day parade, we could require masks at the parade. That's in line with the CDC guidelines. Are you guys seeing like inception here?
We're seeing most of the indoor. There you go.
And this is from cdc.gov.
Well, we could require it for any kind of shopping. As soon as you go in a building, you need to have it on downtown.
Yeah, I think that's
Well,
in.
I mean, it shows indoor, visit a barber, hair salon. I mean, it has a whole, I mean, that little sheet, it just showed a whole
Sorry.
picture. Hey, I can't see the pictures anymore.
Okay, I'm coming back. I have like 7 different resources, so I was
So if
trying
you
to find
scroll
something
down,
else.
if you scroll down to like indoor, I mean, it says go to a crowd indoor shopping center. I mean, it shows.
Yeah, even on the vaccinated side, they all have masks on. It says it's safer, but they do show mask.
And as far as outdoor events and live performances, parades and such, I mean, we could tell everybody that they need to wear a mask. I can imagine what's really going to happen though if we have a big parade. Looking at how our parades are, but how many parades are we potentially going to have between now and big events are we going to have between now and September? 4th of July, Memorial Day.
Those Saturday street closures. I mean, I don't know. If those
I don't know that that's going to drive like masses of people downtown. I think it's going to be more like last summer, maybe hopefully a little bit busier than that. But I don't think we're going to get the crowds like we do at our parades.
And probably not all at one time. Probably
Yeah.
sprinkled throughout the day.
I mean, and that too is going to be put on by an independent organization. So they could request that people wear masks as a condition of their event without it being a city ordinance.
Okay, I've got I've got the governor's order that came through on April 27th. It says Governor Cuomo announces New York State to adopt the new CDC guidance on mask use for fully vaccinated people. And then it goes on to say, according to the new guidance, fully vaccinated people can engage in more activities than unvaccinated people, which include, and then there's a whole long list there, but it says, looking for the masks.
Thing is, without checking who's vaccinated and who's not vaccinated,
That's, yeah.
like it's kind of worthless.
Well, it may not be if someone's choosing not to wear a mask and they have their white card with their vaccination.
Okay.
To say
Right, so-
I'm exempt, I've got a license.
So the governor's new order says that those who are fully vaccinated no longer need to wear masks outdoors, except in certain crowded settings and venues. However, masks should still be worn indoors and should still be worn by people who are not fully vaccinated. So that is the new governor's order.
We could, what are the downtown merchants? They're requiring masks inside right now, right? Are they relying on our Main Street doctrine to tell people that you need to wear a mask?
I don't believe our current ordinance covers indoors. It only
does
covers
not.
outdoors.
We could just take the signs down on Main Street that say mask up.
If you're going to do that, then you need to change the statute, because the statute says right now that is it the MU1 zone that you have to wear masks?
I mean, I understand that. But we could take the signs down, and I don't know. I don't think there's a perfect way to go about this. I think we're going to kind of like there's no perfect way now to make people wear masks. I think as soon as we say you don't need to wear a mask on Main Street, I think it's going to put more pressure on the merchants, telling people you need to have a mask to come inside. People are going to, regardless of whether they've been vaccinated or not, are not going to wear masks on Main Street.
Well, Dave, I would say that may not be the case, because merchants in the rest of the city, other than those in downtown, are not having that problem. And we have no law that requires masks on Chestnut Street or other locations, and that goes for in the town as well. I mean, none of the merchants seem to be having that problem. So I don't know that it's a concern for Main Street as opposed to the others.
Well, I would be in favor of removing the requirement, but then what do we do about parades? It could get a little
Well,
bit.
it does say that according to the governor's order, that except on certain crowded settings and venues.
Right.
So
But it's the enforcement
we
piece,
could-
of course.
we
like
could-
everything else.
based upon that, we could enforce it at a parade or an event.
Right, like the CDC guideline shows masks even for vaccinated people, so that wouldn't be a question of people proving their vaccination status. It would just be like, in this forum, everyone has to have a mask on.
It would be a lot
Right.
less, for lack of better words, sticky too, I think, if we just say everybody as opposed to, saying vaccinated people. I can see
Oh,
that
yeah.
getting
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I think that would
even
heated.
vaccinated people are still required in a
Right,
crowded
that's what I'm-
venue.
right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That kind of helps, by saying everybody wears a mask.
And we always have plainclothes cops at parades, so enforcement wouldn't be that challenging. Like if you don't have a mask on, then the end, you get a ticket, unless you can prove you're medically incapable of wearing a mask.
Well, Lieutenant, are you there?
I am.
Would you mind giving your opinion and about how enforcement would go at parades?
Probably as well as enforcement has been done here during the pandemic. Generally speaking, we would just simply ask for compliance, and if we had, reason at that point, we could issue a ticket.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
But I'll say there's a lot of other minutia in there as far as that goes. But we've had really pretty good luck with just asking people to mask up. So, Katie.
Thanks. I know that you had mentioned previously when this question had been asked that like if people didn't have a mask that you're able to provide them. Is that still the case?
I'd have to take a look at what our PPE stores look like at this point, but I think that we would have close to enough to offer. But most people at this point that we're finding, they have masks with them, simply forgot to put it back on after doing something or
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, any other thoughts? If I'm correct, we're not going to make the decision tonight. It's going to be up to council to lift it, or are we just going to, I guess, could recognize that things have changed? What are our options?
I think we should make a decision here and give our opinion to the rest of the council, and have a motion put forward to the council to either vote yay or nay.
Yeah,
Well, this may
procedurally.
require laying on the desks, right, David?
Yeah,
So-
that's what I was going to say, is that this was an ordinance. So we're going to have to amend the ordinance by action of the council, laying on the desk the whole trip. So there's some time involved. So if you want to move it along, then it'd be best if a decision was made and a draft was available to be laid on the desks.
So what are we saying? Are we focused on parade days? Or are we
Well, we can-
looking at
we
the entire
be consist-
downtown for the next month or
We can
two?
be consistent with the governor's order and state that masks are only required outdoors on events when there's whatever the language is, crowded venues or events type of thing.
How would that affect the opening of Main Street for dining?
That's
We could
outdoor
consider
dining.
that.
The
We could
outdoor
consider
dining?
We could consider that a crowded event.
I think there's even a picture for it, Mayor and John, if I may. I think there is even a on the list that Katie showed us in my memory from 5 minutes ago. hold still. There's a risk assessment for that as well.
Yeah, I didn't think it said masks were needed for outdoor dining, and the whole purpose of shutting down Main Street was for outdoor dining, not for big music events and things. So I don't know that we necessarily need to require masks on Saturdays coming up, unless you're unvaccinated.
Is there some clarity in this chart about that?
Well, it says, yeah, I mean, I think that's tricky because it says dining at an outdoor restaurant, but it's fine for vaccinated people, but less safe for unvaccinated people. And I think that I personally don't think that we should get into anything where we're having a different criteria for people based on their vaccination status.
I think the thing in this image that they're pointing out is with friends from multiple households versus with just people. I think that's the outdoor dining section that they're trying to show here in this chart. Is that it's not that the fact that you're outdoor dining, it's the multiple households part of it, I think is what it's trying to show. I think it's insinuating it's less safe to eat outdoors with people that are not all from the same household, which is kind of the messaging they've been sending from the beginning, is that interacting with people outside of your immediate group is the COVID risk.
Well, just one piece of clarification. The last time Main Street was open for dining, were people taking masks off when they were eating outdoors?
Yeah, when
Yes.
you're seated, you can take them off.
So this seems to indicate that depends a bit as to who you're with.
Yeah, that's been the messaging from the beginning, is that the problematic part is that if you're dining outside with people that you're not living with and that you're not in close contact with regularly, that's the COVID risk. So I think that's what they're trying to say here. Like if your family goes out to dinner together, they're probably not going to spread COVID to one another. But if your family goes out to dinner with 8 other people, the likelihood of spreading COVID goes up, which has been the messaging from the beginning. And I think this is just reiterating vaccinated people can start to do those types of things. Unvaccinated people, it's more problematic.
And John, we only have small tables for outdoor dining on the Saturdays. We don't have tables for 8 and 10 people. So it's really designed for small groups who know each other.
No, I'm only thinking about people who are in an enforcement mode and how they intervene and what they may hear when they intervene. That's
Last
all.
year, we did not. Last year, we enforced masks for people who were walking on the Saturdays. We did not enforce masks for people who were sitting at tables.
Well, and that was based on the state guidelines that once you were seated at a table, you didn't have to have a mask on.
We follow the same rules we follow for indoor dining right now. If you go into a restaurant on Main Street, nobody asks if you're with your immediate family or friends. You don't wear a mask if you go into the Autumn Cafe and sit down at a table. It'd be no different if you were sitting at an outdoor table.
Well, what do people think about the next step?
I think the mayor had a kind of a good plan, if that works for laying it on the desks and so forth, of amending the language to be more in line with the current state guidelines.
So that's fine with me to draft something, and then that would be discussed at the council meeting. If anyone had a friendly amendment, they could make it, David?
It would depend on, you
How
can make
friendly?
yeah, you can make technical changes and small changes, but if you change the language, generally you have to relay. I mean, are you talking about having the new statute to comply with CDC guidelines? Is that the language you're looking at? As opposed to saying you don't have to wear a mask in downtown? I'm just not sure. I want to make sure that I'm drafting what I'm being.
I think that's what I had in
Total
mind,
draft.
David, but that again, I'm just one of four. Did everybody kind of have that understanding? That it would be within lines of CDC guidelines?
I would suggest using the same language that is in the governor's announcement.
Yeah, Mayor, if you could zap a copy of that to me at your convenience, I'd appreciate it.
Yep, I'll do it now.
And David, you feel comfortable being able to draft that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do people think?
Sounds good to me, John.
And me? Dave Risberger, Katie?
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So David, you're going to get something from Gary, and you're going to draft what will be laid soon, and we'll be able to discuss it at the next council meeting.
Yeah, what's the next council meeting date? I just don't know off the top of my head.
The 18th.
That's next Tuesday. So if it needs to be laid, then it has to be done today.
Yeah. Maybe able to do it tomorrow. We'll see.
Thank you.
All right. If that's done, it's in process now, and we'll see. And we're going to the next topic, MU1, the code update, MU-1 code update. Stephen?
Yeah, so this is a fairly large document. It's been put in front of you guys to start looking at it for, I guess, legislative intent. The Planning Commission has reviewed it. They are comfortable with the concepts in it. Due to its size, I thought I would kind of include this on the agenda so you guys can start, kind of going through it. I'm not exactly sure how you want to review it because I guess based on, with the chicken ordinance, we spent a lot of time looking at it. We spent a lot of time going through it. Well, the chicken/bee ordinance. So yeah, I don't know if you guys want to go through this piece by piece or how you guys want to review it. There are still some, not content, but kind of just, I guess like copy editing phases still going through it. But this is kind of where the legislation would be. Like this is the kind of the meat of it. So yeah, I don't know exactly how you want to review this or how I mean, with the Planning Commission, we kind of really went through the, kind of really went content heavy. I don't know if I don't know what process you want to see for this review, just because of its size. I don't know if you want to review like a couple sections of it at a time, or if we want to just, come back to this once we've read the entire thing, or if you just want me to kind of give you an overview of what's in it. Like, I don't really, I mean, we can kind of go about it however you want.
Stephen?
Yep.
How much time can we devote to this reviewing? do you have a need to have this approved and quickly, or do we have time to go?
No, I
through
mean,
it?
it's not something we have to do like in a week.
Mhm.
But it is, it's pretty long compared to like most of the documents we look at. It's a pretty radical change to how we've
Yep.
kind of zoned the downtown in the past. So it's a really, it's got a lot of kind of moving parts to it. I've been working on a kind of like a what to expect when you're looking at a form-based code handout as part of this. That would be like a supplemental, I'm looking at this code, what am I looking at kind of documents, so that it would kind of provide users with like a codex, like a process from start to finish as to how this whole thing works. They decided to tear my office apart last week, so that kind of hindered my forward progress. But yeah, so I mean, it's something that I think I would like to see done like in the next maybe 2 months, like
Mhm.
as far as like from start to finish. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of up to you. I mean, I don't know how you want to, because I don't know how you want to review it. I don't know if you guys have all read it, probably not, because you just got it on Friday. So I'm assuming no one sat down and just like tore through this all weekend. And I don't know if that's how you want to do it, or if you just want me to kind of walk you through each section as we go, and we can kind of go from like, I don't like this, I do like this, kind of like a 500-foot view of each chapter.
I think that would be a good idea, but I think we should, if there's nothing else, unless there's something really pressing for us, John, to do over the next couple months, and I can't imagine there be anything that's got to be rushed. I think we should devote the next couple of meetings to this and do exactly what Stephen has said. I mean, I've been part of these planning commission meetings, and it's a lot of information to take in and process, and it would be helpful if we get the as he put it, the 500-foot view of this.
Would that be something that the council, which would actually have to vote on it, need to be part of? Because I think that if 4 of us are the only ones who are going through the lengthy exposition of it, we might be leaving the others out and just have to go through it again.
These meetings are recorded. They can certainly review it later. I mean, otherwise it just becomes a committee of the whole reviewing it, and then you end up having a double vote of the same people. I don't know. I mean, they can certainly listen in or just watch the video, but I would suggest we just work on it as a committee and tell them to please watch the videotape if they haven't attended.
I mean, the planning commission, as Dave said, they've also been recorded as well. So, I mean, there's all those planning commission meetings where we talked about this for hours at a time. We spent hours at the planning commission meetings going over this document. So there's quite a bit of information kind of logged there as well. So yeah, there's a decent amount of information kind of floating around.
Well, what I think we could do, rather than but I think that we once we start doing this, much like has been done with the planning commission, to inform the council that this is going to be happening in the legislative committee, and people should either tune in or come to this meeting, or view the recording and issue any questions or considerations they might want to have done. So we put something beyond simply doing it. We should be letting them know this is happening in more or less real time, and tell them how to be involved. Would that be acceptable?
Well, the more people we have involved in, if you're talking about having all 8 of us involved in the actual initial discussions of this and decision making of this, I think you're talking about a potential for a very long process versus we review it, we come up with our recommendations if we need to, if we feel that something needs to be changed. We can take information from anybody else that's watching it, or if they want to offer a suggestion maybe at the end of the meeting. And then we bring it forward to the council for a final discussion of what we want. And if they feel that something, if people feel strongly we need to change something, then we can always bring it back, change it, bring it back to the council and then vote on it. I'm just afraid that we could end up turning this into a 6 or 8 month project when I don't think we really want that.
I agree with Dave, and I was going to say something very similar.
But I
Did
want
it
to,
take, how long did it take to go through it with planning?
we've been
Because
talking,
planning is another committee, correct?
Yeah, the
They-
planning's a commission. Yeah, the planning
Uh,
commission.
pla-
we've been talking about it for months, Stephen. And actually this, we initially as a council have talked about this. You've been working on this for what, 2 years now?
Yeah, it's been a long process. COVID, the whole COVID thing, we kind of had to switch what we were focusing on. We moved a lot of the office focus into updating our functions so that we could work remotely, as well as putting all of our forms and like paperwork processes online and fillable. So that kind of took up a lot of time. So yeah, I mean, it's been, you know, it's been a while and it's gone through a couple iterations. This code is, the original process was going to be more based on constructed buildings, where this kind of went into a kind of a different, went to transects instead of building types, which I won't like get into the weeds on that because it'll just be a mind, it's kind of like a red pill, blue pill thing, like on the Matrix. Like if I try to explain all of it to you, it'll just get really weird and awkward. So the final version of this code is it's a transit based code. Transit coding is kind of like traditional coding in that there are kind of defined zones, kind of like what we're used to. Like there's an MU1, there's an MU2. Transit coding is based on urban density patterns. So instead of being based on what we're using land for, it's based on kind of how those construction and like built environment patterns look. So like Transit 6 is our downtown and it's very built up. It's our most built up area of the city. So naturally that MU1 becomes kind of that Transit 6. But the weird thing is our old MU1 zone, or the MU1 zone that we understand, is not all the same. So downtown Oneonta has an entirely different built environment than like Market Street does. Or like the area where the Dietz Loft is going has a completely different constructed environment than Main Street Oneonta. So what transit zoning does is it looks at our big MU1 zone and it says, okay, we don't want to zone the entire thing the same because it's not the same. And those places serve like very different kind of purposes. So like the area that like the lofts on Dietz projects being constructed is made up of a different type of built environment, and it's more of a transitional zone from downtown to like the residential zone, which is like the Walnut Street Historic District. So like that zone doesn't need to be built up like Main Street, and it really shouldn't be built up like Main Street. It should be a transitional area. Whereas like Market Street, there's a lot of room for growth, but we don't want it to overwhelm what our Main Street is, which is kind of our historic economic center. So Market Street has its kind of its own transect with its own kind of guidelines. And the idea with those different transects is that you build them out to meet the purposes that we kind of see them as. We want Main Street to be a dense, really built, really economically involved area that has like pretty much like a kind of an anything goes. I mean, not completely Wild West, but you know, we really want that zone to be very vibrant and like busy and dense. And we kind of want the adjacent transect which is like where the Lost on Deeds project is, to have some of those qualities, but not be quite as built up. So the idea is that as you move away from that T6 transit, you get less and less dense and you become less and less built up. If you play it all the way out, like a transit 1 is like a park. Like it's a totally rural, like not built part of the world. Like, you know, like Neowa Park or Wilbur Park becomes like a transit 1. So the direction that this code kind of sets us up for is to kind of move away from what's called Euclidean zoning. And Euclidean zoning is what we have now, where everything's divided by uses. Like we're like, okay, so an R2 is a single family zone, and an R3 is this, and an R4, like those concepts of like of zones being exclusively used for one thing or another, and meeting that purpose on use, we kind of dump that in favor of zoning that's based more on like density and like how those neighborhoods interact with each other. So like what we would end up with, you know, in a master plan, like in my like supervillain headquarters process, we kind of get rid of all those other zones and we work towards just having a T1 through 6 zone in the entire city, where we not only get rid of some of the zones, but we actually tweak our zoning to meet the conditions that we see in the city, instead of, you know, kind of arbitrarily applying, you know, these Euclidean type zoning categories. Like, because kind of what we've seen in the past is like when we try to pigeonhole things and base them on use, we end up with like lots of variances and like lots of weird stuff kind of floating around, where we're like, oh, when we drew this boundary, maybe we didn't really think it out, or, you know, is this type of retail the same as this other type of retail? Like this code kind of gets rid of a lot of the use categories, so we're not looking at defining things in our zoning code so much based on like, is this an ice cream store, or is this a car rental? You know, is this a coffee shop, or is this a, you know, a food processing place? You get away from a lot of that, like really kind of limiting language around like what buildings are used for, and you move towards a code that's really focused on creating an interaction between pedestrians and the environment that they're in. So like the concept is, this code focuses on making people feel comfortable and making people enjoy like the places that they're interacting with. So it has a lot of kind of, I don't want to say aesthetic, but it has a lot of construction details in it. Like a lot of, we want you to build this, not that. We want you to put doors here, not there. You know, requirements for like windows and doors and material types and landscaping types and lighting types. And the idea is that by really regulating those aspects of the environment, you then can kind of say like, we're not super concerned about what type of use you have. You know, we don't really care like exactly what you might be doing inside the building. We're really concerned about how does that building interact with the public, and like how does that building read to the people that are having to engage with it like every day. So that's kind of like the 5,000, you know, the mile high view of what you're looking at.
Katie,
Okay, I have a couple of follow-up questions. Based on what you said, that all sounds really good. What happens to variances that have previously been issued?
So variances exist like forever, basically. If you issue a variance, what you're doing is you're saying, this applicant met very specific state mandated rules, and our zoning board determined that they were entitled to relief from the zoning code. So a use variance or an area variance, they go with the property in perpetuity. So there's really no, I mean, short of basically suing someone from the get-go, once you kind of set those variances in place, they're kind of there forever.
Okay. So, and as far as like the role of the ZBA, how does that change, or does it not?
So what I've included in this code specific to our MU1 would be that the zoning board would, so the planning commission would be obligated to make basically a findings and provide that to the zoning board of appeals for variances. So essentially what would happen is the zoning board, when making any determination in this MU1 zone, would basically, as part of their decision-making process, would have to provide into the record a determination from the planning commission about how an applicant's request impacts negatively or positively the zone. So the idea would be the planning commission would be involved in some of these zoning requests in providing their own input as to how this affects the zone. And then the zoning board would have to, on the record, respond to that. So I guess where that's going is it provides another kind of layer of review for some of those requests. And it provides the zoning board with more information before they make their determination. So for, like, in theory, like if someone were to make a zoning application or a variance application that was really outlandish, the planning commission would provide, basically a findings that said, this is why we think this variance is a really bad idea and why it doesn't, work with our comprehensive plan or is not in conjunction with what we're trying to do in our zoning code. The zoning board would then have to read that into the record as part of the application. And the zoning board would then have to make a determination in line with state law that said, this is how either the planning commission maybe misinterpreted that, or this is why we as the zoning board feel that the applicant still meets the standards required as part of the zoning variance. So ideally, it would just provide another layer of input from the city's planning commission as a way to, I don't know, maybe enlighten some
Sounds
people.
like it sort of forces more of an objective opinion.
So the planning commission, if you look at the code, the role of the planning commission is to provide essentially like a planning service to the city. Like they operate as like the kind of reviewers of the comprehensive plan. They're the ones engaging or are supposed to be engaging in the planning process in the city. The zoning board, their only job is to provide relief from the zoning code. So they're not, they can provide zoning interpretations, they can provide zoning variances, but the concept here is that the planning commission, who's kind of the guiding organization as far as our planning processes are concerned, they would be providing the ZBA with, this is the intent of the zone. This is kind of what we see as like the goals of the comprehensive plan. And they could then provide input as to whether a theoretical variance or interpretation, how that could negatively or positively impact the zone and its, overall like relation to the comprehensive plan.
I think that's a fantastic idea. Granted, I'm the liaison to the planning commission, but I think that hearing that explanation, Stephen, has been very helpful for me. And it seems like that's something that's been lacking for a while. I think it would only help the zoning board in making their decisions.
Yeah, the zoning board has a very specific job, and the planning commission has a very specific job. And making sure that those two interact with each other, I think, is a positive thing for both boards. So long story short, that's kind of where that would go with the planning commission in relation to zoning board, and zoning variances are forever. So that's why they're super duper important. So a couple other things, like a lot of cities have moved towards form-based coding. Buffalo created a pretty extensive citywide form-based code that's it's been very well received and it's done really well. They're currently one of the top recipients of historic tax credits. I mean, they've had just a massive explosion of investment through their historic preservation parts of their form-based code. Albany has a very decent, like a good form-based code. A lot of progressive-minded cities have moved towards form-based codes. A lot of those codes are based on a lot of different concepts. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you can organize form-based coding. This is just one of them. The transit zone is kind of one of the easier ones to kind of use because it kind of still is it's similar enough to Euclidean zoning that people still recognize the concept of, you know, specific geographical areas mapped out based on a certain type of, you know, density. Whereas like some form-based coding gets into like streets, it's all organized by streets, or it's all organized by building types, which gets really tricky if you've got like, you know, if you have like a lot of weird buildings where like one zone might have 6 different building types in it. So this is kind of the easiest way to organize kind of how our city's already laid out. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, you got 122 pages of reading. And again, I know, like, so you'll find parts in there where we haven't assigned like certain chapter numbers and stuff. So as you go through it, if you find like something that says insert, that's like a spot where we're, you know, we just have to set like a chapter or like a subcategory. So like really what we're doing right now is reading it for content. Like if you read through it and go, oh, I'm really opposed to like shielded lighting. I mean, you know, that's where what I'm saying. You're like, I'm really opposed to like certain signage types, you know, like that's what we're kind of looking for. If you go to the use table, there's a whole section called land use. I mean, if you look through that and say, I really think that we should allow one particular type or not one particular type of use, that's, you know, that's kind of what we're looking for.
Stephen,
Yep.
you just used that phrase, what we're looking for. Tell me more about what that means.
So like, I guess what I'm saying is I'm going through and I'm editing some of this for just like I said, inserting, you know, page numbers. I'm inserting like chapters. I mean, before that, we didn't even have chapters assigned to this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going back through it and I'm reading it for places where we need to insert, you know, chapters and page numbers and diagram references. So like you can email me and be like, you missed a comma on page 85, paragraph 2, and that's fine. I mean, that's good too. What I'm really looking for, and I think theoretically what the planning commission's looking for, is like, we had a lot of discussion about building heights. We were kind of drawn like 50-50 on like maximum building heights. There was a lot of discussion about signage, like what type of signage do we want? We were probably 50-50. Half the commission was okay with digital signage. The other half was like, no way, Jose. So there was, you know, some feelings about how signage kind of worked into this. What was another good one? There was some discussion about uses. Some people in the planning commission thought that we should allow fraternity and sorority houses downtown. Some people didn't. So there's, if you look through the document, you will find that there's a lot of room for, you know, someone to say like, I hate the fact that you don't allow vinyl siding. I mean, that's one of the things that's kind of in this document. We would be moving away from like allowing certain types of building materials in the downtown. Some people are obviously going to have strong feelings about that. Or maybe not. Maybe I just have strong feelings about building material and I'm completely off. So that's kind of one of those things that we, this particular document was written through what I felt the comprehensive plan was looking for. The planning commission agreed. So it's not just kind of a Steve Yearly manifesto, but I can say it, I'm predisposed against vinyl siding. So, I mean, part of it could be a Steve Yearly manifesto. So that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Like if you go to the design standards chapter, there's an entire section on, approved building materials. I mean, you guys might be like, you're crazy. We want, corrugated steel siding. It's really, it kind of gets into the weeds on some of this stuff about like how we're envisioning the downtown to look.
Mhm.
So if the council sits down and says we firmly think that you should be able to vinyl side a building downtown, then that would obviously be something we'd have to address in the in the code. And I'm only picking on vinyl siding because it's easy. It's like an immediate, flash topic. At least in the circles I run in, I guess.
Well, where to go with this? I'm still inclined to say that the council should be not necessarily involved in every minutia, but I think the council needs to be brought along with the legislative committee. There's a lot I already don't understand. So I'm going to have to see it and I'll understand it as we go along. But I don't think it should be held just with the planning commission and then going through this and then having a surprise to the other members of the council.
John, I don't think anybody's talking about having a surprise for the council. If they're surprised, it means they didn't read it. When they didn't.
No, okay, let's suggest what are we going to need to say to the council about what we're doing and then what they could be doing to be running parallel to this or to this is a bigger issue than I've ever encountered with legislative committee.
What I would suggest, John, is let the council know that we are going to be discussing this, and you can make sure that they have the document to review. And if you want to invite them to the Zoom, that's fine. But I think I wouldn't open up the discussion, the main discussion outside of this committee, because it'll just slow the process down. I would open it up to the rest of the council at some point if they have any further questions. But I think it's got to be the initial discussion has got to be within the committee and with us and with Stephen, and then open it up later at the end of the meeting, maybe for further questions. That way they have the opportunity to both attend and ask questions. I'm just trying to keep it open, but at the same time, keep the process moving forward, because it could very easily be slowed way down with the size of this document.
Well, where is the document now, Stephen? Is it ready to be distributed?
I think it was attached as part of this meeting.
Okay. Pages.
Yeah, so I mean,
If we
again,
get print,
it
at
was
least
sent
get
out
it
on,
printed, and then distributed to the council would be helpful.
it was sent out on Friday with the meeting. And again, like I said, I think the first part of the document, I mean, I think you could probably, if you just were trying to get an idea of how to make this whole thing work, and kind of get an idea of what it is you're looking at. It's kind of organized in the same way a normal code would be. So parts 1 through 4 are the real kind of meat and potatoes as to like how this whole thing runs. Parts 5 through 10 are just basically item specific design components. So you can understand the code by not reading exactly how a transportation plan would work in this whole thing. So like parts 1 through 4 really are the like, these are the uses that are allowed. This is the map that's connected. This is how the properties work within these maps and within these usages. But you know, there's another great example. Part 7, the transportation section. This code would remove parking minimums. I mean, I know that will be a topic.
Sure. How many pages are there in the document then?
122.
122. Could we get the clerk to run that off for every member of the council?
Absolutely. I'll place it in each of your boxes and let you know when it's available.
That's great.
I
Here-
do not need a.
Nor do I. I'm fine reading it online.
Printed off.
Yeah. I third that. Thank you.
I'll send out an email as a poll, see who would like a printed copy.
I'd like a printed copy, and we can ask the council members whether they want to do it print it out or read it online.
Sure.
Okay.
John, I would suggest that we review the first 5 sections, which is half of it, and have a discussion at the next meeting.
Okay.
And maybe go through one section at a time, do a gross overview. And then if we have questions, we can ask Stephen. And if we have suggestions for changes, we can discuss it at that point.
Yeah, and I think that every member of the council, like any members of this commission, can put in so much money, excuse me. How much money do you need? But we can put in a great deal of time with it, or we could accept the authority of Steve and the recommendations of Steve. People are going to approach it in very different ways. So I think we should, as you were saying, let's get this out and begin the discussion with it and let council know what we're doing. Okay, with that, I've just been reminded that we have a finance meeting and a human resources meeting coming up now. So is there any more discussion among ourselves before we close?
No, thank you.
Okay, let's adjourn. Everyone's in agreement?
Yes.
Okay.